Fasting is an institution as old as Adam. It is nature's ancient universal remedy for many problems. Animals instinctively fast when they become ill. We go on vacation from work to relax, recharge, and to regain new perspectives in our life. Why do we not take occasional breaks from food?
Though we generally think of fasting when people hear about Muslims fasting, they know Ramadan. Every year, Muslims fast for that 1 month, 30 days. However, that is the obligatory principle of fasting. But this period of fasting doesn't represent the totality of fasting in Islam. The principles of fasting, because they address so many different aspects of human psychology, physical needs, material needs, their emotional needs, this is not restricted only to one time in the year. And that's why the principle of fasting in Islam includes the whole year.
Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and all three fathers of Western medicine, Hippocrates, Galen, and Paracelsus, practiced and believed in fasting.
On behalf of the American people, including Muslim communities in all 50 states, I want to extend best wishes to Muslims in America and around the world. Ramadan Kareem. Ramadan is the month in which Muslims believe the Quran was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, beginning with a simple word, Iqra. It is therefore a time when Muslims reflect upon the wisdom and guidance that comes with faith, and the responsibility that human beings have to one another and to God.
Alright, so that's a good question. People ask, why is it that if Allah wants me to worship more, why should I fast, not eat and not drink? How does not eating and not drinking help me focus better, worship better, and recite more Quran during the day? And the scholars have a very nice answer to this. They say that when the stomach is full, the rest of the body parts become hungry. Your eyes become hungry, your ears, all other parts, your desires, your lust increase. But when your stomach is hungry, the rest of your body parts become full. And if we were to take the example, if there's someone that's in the desert, let's say, or someone who's starving, and he's really, really hungry and needs to eat first, do you think this person has time for gossip? No, because his ears become full. Do you think he has time to listen to anything that's haram? No, because his stomach is empty, his ears are full. Do you think he has time to look at haram things? Is that the main concern? Like, he's really starving, he needs to eat, and his main concern is, let me find something haram to look at? No, because now his eyes become full, and his private parts become full. So as the stomach becomes empty, the rest of the body parts are full. It kills, in other words, it kills all your other desires, and now you can focus on other things. You can focus on Quran, you can focus on Allah, you can focus on your worship and improving your acts of worship. And that's the whole reason that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to put our food and drink aside so we can worship and focus on some other things. A lot of people, they're fasting, and a lot of people, if you ask them, what is the definition of fasting? They tell you, fasting is when you don't eat and you don't drink from sunup until sundown. And this is the childhood definition, but people still use it. Fasting is when you don't eat and don't drink from sunup to sundown. You know, fasting, and the word sawm, it means to abstain. So it's not just abstaining from food and drink, but it's abstaining from everything else that's bad. From lying, from cheating, from using profanity, from anything else that is bad. Not just eating and drinking. Unfortunately, people now, they focus on what goes into their mouth, and nobody cares what comes out of their mouth. You'll find someone who's so adamant to not get a drop of water in his mouth. They make wudu, and they spit 100 times after wudu to make sure that not the slightest amount of wetness goes into their throat. But then they don't care what comes out of their mouth. And so you find them during the day in Ramadan, and they are backbiting, they're spreading rumors, they're lying, they're using bad words, they're cursing, but yet at the same time they exaggerate about other things that are permissible. Don't take a shower in Ramadan, because the cold water will hit your ears. Who drinks from his ears? They tell you, don't even smell good food. Don't use cologne. All these things are not even required in their religion. But their main concern is, nothing goes in. And yet they don't care about what comes out. So one of the things about acts of worship is that they're to impact the way you behave. And so fasting is supposed to impact your manners and your behavior and the language that you use and make you more truthful and not lie and so on and so forth. So it's not just about what goes in, but more importantly, it's about what comes out. Alright, the whole idea of the month of Ramadan is that we're supposed to acquire good deeds and habits during the month that will continue for the rest of the year. Alright? And what happens usually, unfortunately, is people have two different lifestyles. Lifestyle A, which is how I live outside of Ramadan, and lifestyle B, which is how I change in Ramadan. So in Ramadan they read Quran, they pray, they fast, they don't lie, they don't use profanity, the guy who smokes stops smoking, the guy who bites his fingernails stops biting his fingernails. Every possible improvement, they make it in Ramadan. And then when Eid comes, they go back to lifestyle A. Ramadan's over, the Quran goes back in the shelf, collects dust, stops fasting for the whole year, stops all the other kinds of good deeds, stops giving in charity, stops being generous, because they went back to lifestyle A. You know, when you hear the scholars talking about Ramadan, they always refer to it as a school, as a madrasa. That you're supposed to learn something in this school that you continue for the rest of the year. So it's not just that I'm good in Ramadan and I can move back to being whatever I am outside of Ramadan. It's for me to acquire good habits during the month and continue them for the rest of the year. I'm going to tell you a quick true story. This actually happened. And in a Muslim country, there was a man who only prayed in Ramadan. Outside of Ramadan, he stopped praying immediately. So in that country, they announce Eid on television. When Eid is the next day, Ramadan's over, they announce it in the news. He was praying Isha. And while he was praying, the news was on, the TV was on, and my uncle saw this with his own eyes. The reporter said that tomorrow is Eid, and the guy went out of his prayer. I know this is an extreme example, but all of us do this in varying degrees. We have how we behave in Ramadan and how we change, and the whole idea is to not change, inshallah.
Of course, the Prophet ﷺ told us that the believer eats for one stomach, whereas the hypocrite eats for seven. And there's very different ways that we could understand this hadith. But one is that, alhamdulillah, the believer, whatever they participate in, is full of barakah, it's full of blessing. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses it, from that we understand that a lot of benefit comes out of a very small amount. So the amount of food may be small, but the benefit that Allah allows the believer to take from it is a lot. Whereas the hypocrite, of course, is someone who outwardly professes to be a Muslim, but in reality they conceal those attributes of being a disbeliever. And so that's the nature of disbelief, in a sense, is that nothing really satisfies that person, because their heart, their soul, their mind is really connected to the world and the things of the world. And these worldly things never give real satisfaction. The real satisfaction comes from knowing Allah, remembering Allah, and worshipping Him. And that's what gives rest to the soul. That's what gives satisfaction to the heart. And the soul and the heart, of course, connected to the body. So if the soul is at rest, the heart is at rest, then also the body of the believer feels satisfied. Whereas, of course, the exact opposite is the case for the hypocrite. And that's why they eat for 7 stomachs, whereas the believer eats